Hello, Heather Hoffman here, and I have a clean and simple card to share with you today using a beautiful Unity stamp image called Thanks for You. It's a beautiful sentiment stamp, and it's one I've actually had for a little while, and I hadn't even used it yet. I had to peel the backing off, you notice, and I'm going to really quickly just rub it in my hand to get any dust or anything from the manufacture process off. And I'm going to use my MISTI to stamp it. I have a panel of white cardstock that I have trimmed down to 2 3/4 by 4 inches, and I'm lining it up in the center with my MISTI. And forgot I needed to take the foam pad out when you use Unity. It's already got the foam on it. And you notice I'm adjusting a little to square it off. It's sometimes hard with the red rubber stamps. You can't see how it's lined up. So I use the grids on my MISTI. Once I line it up where I want, I kind of adjust it a little bit to make sure it's straight and square. And then I check to make sure it still fit where I wanted it on my panel of white cardstock. Then I've just used an embossing powder tool. This will make sure that the embossing powder doesn't stick to anything but where I've stamped my image. And I'm using clear embossing ink, and to make sure I get a good impression, I stamped it once and then I inked it up and stamped it one more time. This just ensures that you get a really clear impression. You don't have to do this. I like doing it with my MISTI just for that reason, because then I can stamp it twice like that. Then I have some antique gold embossing powder. You can use any kind of gold or metallic for this, but I really like the antique gold. Almost has a hint of a coppery feel to it, and a little more of a vintage gold, and I really liked it for this card. Kind of an elegant with that script of the font on that. So I'll clean up my embossing powder and pull out my heat gun, and then I'm going to heat set that real quick just to melt the embossing powder, and that's what's going to give it that beautiful shine. And you may notice on this card too, I just thought I'd mention, normally clean and simple and layers aren't two things you'd put together on a card, but I particularly chose to use white and cream cardstock just because it provides some interest and variation, but it's still very soft and neutral, so it keeps that clean and simple feel. All right, now I've got my embossing powder is all melted and done there. Check out that pretty shine. Isn't that fun? Embossing powder is still like magic to me. Now here's all my pieces of white and cream cardstock, and I've trimmed them all down. I started with my A2 card base, which is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and then I trimmed each descending piece by a 1/2 inch smaller on each side. So that first white one that I'm going to stick down is 3 3/4 by 5 inches, and I'm going to just mount that directly on my cream colored card base. And then the next cream piece is 3 1/4 by 4 1/2, and then as I already mentioned, that small white piece is 2 3/4 by 4. I'm going to mount those two together, and then in between, just to add another little layer of interest, I've pulled out some jute string from Mayarts. It's something I use on a lot of my cards. That's why I have such a big spool. I know you can buy it in smaller amounts, but I go through pretty large quantities of it. So I just wrapped it around the inside of my card base. Make sure you do it just around the front. I've done it before and finished my card and realized I tied my whole card closed, which isn't very fun. So I like to just wrap it around. Your card will still fold and hold flat, and it works quite well. But I tied it in a bow, and I tend to fiddle with my bows a little to get them just how I like them, and then I trim the ends off. I leave extra so that I can trim the ends exactly where I want them. And then I slid it over a little to the side because I had it a little further over than I wanted. Now I'm going to mount that front panel with a little bit of foam adhesive tape. Again, you could use less than what I've used here. I've mentioned before I tend to overuse adhesive because I like things to be sturdy and stable, and know I can send them in the mail and they're going to arrive looking as good as when I sent them. So peel all that off, and I'm going to attach that on there. And there you have it, a clean and simple card that still has lots of layers and lets that sentiment focal point just shine and stand out on its own. And that's a perfect sentiment to make such a statement. And I also add a little tiny bit of adhesive behind my bow. I like to do this because then I can kind of hold the bow exactly where I want it to be. And also, once the glue dries, it keeps, if you catch one of the strings and pull, your bow isn't going to come untied. So it's just one little thing that you don't have to do, but I like to do just to know that it's nice and sturdy and held in place. Thanks so much for coming by today. Have a wonderful day.